I'm perhaps the least qualified to make this answer because I'm a lawyer. So I look at everything as a legal lens and I don't see it as that social lens. So I just have to be caveat to say that I've spent like 10 years of school just focusing on how to solve problems through a legal lens. So I'm not equipped for that. I do though think this goes to a more wider picture, not just about communalism or not white nationalism or Hindutva nationalism generally speaking, but the terrorism laws, right? In a post 9/11 era globally have tried to categorize or put into a different legal paradigm terrorism and to dispense with all of the rights that we usually have under criminal trials, right? So I think what John was saying and what I want to really emphasize here is counterterrorism laws across the world, and India is part of that sort of trend, right? Do try and treat terrorism as a small war rather than a big crime. It's a big crime. It's a crime. Yes, people die. You have the IPC, you have the penal codes of India that can prosecute people for murder, et cetera, all the crimes that are recognized. But when you put it into the category of a small war, you dispense with all the civil liberties that you have attached to criminal processes, to the right to fair trial, to the right to see the evidence that's being presented against you. All of those are dispensed with because we're in small war land. We're not in big crime land. I would emphasize to everyone on this call, and I'm not sure if Indira and Ritesh would agree, but we should think of these as big crimes. Yes, the terrorism can be a big crime, right? And how we define terrorism has to be narrowly tailored, but we must use the things that we have as protections for civil liberties, regardless of if it's terrorism or if it's a general crime. It's a big crime, so we should prosecute it like a big crime, and not put it into this legal weird vacuum where we've dispensed with all of the rights that are guaranteed for fair trial for people because we're treating it as if it's some kind of act of war when they're consistently happening. And the definition of terrorism has to change over time. So I didn't answer Mr. Jain's question. I think that he's right. There is a lot of community building that has to happen, coalition building that has to happen, changing the minds of people who are supportive of these repressive regimes. Yes, agreed. From the legal lens, and of course, I'm biased towards all solutions being through a legal lens. I think that we need to think about this paradigm of big crime versus small war as a very important definitional place for us to move forward past the post 9/11 anti-terrorism law regimes that we've had across the world. And by the way, this is a very common problem amongst all common law nations. The British had set up all of these overarching laws in their colonial rule. Now we're reviving them in this terrorism age in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh. We're seeing it everywhere. So there is like a history for this, and that's not a great history. And perhaps we should move away from that history because it doesn't really recognize the autonomy, the sovereignty, the human rights of people. It looks at them as colonial subjects the same way that the British did. And that's what I would sort of end on, that these are vestiges of the colonialist past and the legal regimes that were set up by the British as well.